Have you ever stopped to think that the way you eat your dinner might say a whole lot about your culture? I mean, table manners are so much more than just which fork you're supposed to use. They're actually a pretty fascinating window into a society's core values. Okay, so picture this. You're in a restaurant. Is slurping your noodles a good thing or a bad thing? Well, the answer totally depends on where you are in the world. And that one simple act shows you just how different cultures can have the complete opposite idea of what's polite. And that kind of brings us to a really important point. The habits you don't even think twice about at home, they could be sending a totally wrong message when you're traveling. It's not about who's right or wrong, it's about learning to read the room, a different set of social rules. Now, just to be clear, everything we're diving into today comes straight from our source material. So this isn't just a random collection of opinions. These are actual, documented cultural observations that show these subtle but super important differences in dining etiquette. All right, so first up, let's talk about the sounds we make when we eat. And believe it or not, this whole acoustic dimension of dining is where you see some huge cultural divides. Which brings us right back to that first question about slurping. In Japan, making noise while you eat your noodles is totally normal. It's not just okay, it's seen as a genuine compliment to the chef, a sign that you are loving the meal. But you do that same thing in a lot of Western countries, and you might get some serious side-eye from the other tables. And, this quote from our source material just nails the Western perspective. The key word is unobtrusively. The main goal is to not disturb anyone else, to be really considerate of that shared space. Here's another great one. In Japan, blowing on your hot soup to cool it down is just a practical thing you do. You want to enjoy your food while it's still nice and hot, right? But for many Westerners, that same action can come across as a little bit childish, or maybe like you're lacking a bit of polish. So what's really going on here? It all comes down to the underlying values. Is the top priority showing your immediate enthusiastic enjoyment of the food, or is it more about maintaining a kind of formal composure and being quiet for others? And look, neither one is better. They're just different playbooks. Okay, so moving on. How about getting a waiter's attention? Yep, you guessed it. The accepted way to do this changes a lot depending on where you're eating. In Japan, it's pretty common to just call out to a waiter in a clear voice. But in many English-speaking countries, it's all about being subtle, right? You try to catch their eye, maybe give a little discreet wave. This quote really says it all. What's seen as perfectly normal and efficient in one place, just calling out for service, can feel, as the source puts it, jarringly discourteous in another. It's such a powerful example of how much communication styles can vary. So the big idea here is this classic cultural contrast, directness versus discretion. Is it better to be clear, loud, and to the point? Or is it better to be subtle, nonverbal, and, well, discreet? All right, for our last big comparison, let's get physical. Let's talk about how we actually handle our plates and bowls. And this is where you see a huge difference in just physical habits. In Japan, it's totally customary to lift your rice bowl or soup cup up towards your mouth. In the West, though, the rules generally say that plates and bowls stay firmly planted on the table. But what's really wild is how this is viewed. In Japan, lifting the bowl isn't just practical. Our source points out it's seen as an expected gesture of refinement. It just goes to show you that what might look a little clumsy to an outsider is actually the very definition of grace in that culture. So after all this, what's the big takeaway? Well, you can think of all this information as your own personal cultural passport. When you take the time to learn these little differences, you turn that knowledge into a much smoother and way more respectful experience when you travel. And really, this all boils down to what our source material calls cultural literacy. Look, it's not about memorizing a giant rule book. It's about having the awareness that these differences are out there and just being able to navigate them with a little bit of grace. So let's wrap this up. The bottom line is pretty clear. Table manners are basically a secret cultural code. What's polite in one place can easily be seen as impolite somewhere else. And understanding that isn't just about not having awkward moments. It's about building bridges and having better, more harmonious experiences with people, wherever you go. And I want to leave you with one last question to chew on. Now that we've looked at all these different rules, take a second to think about your own culture. What are the unspoken rules that govern your dinner table?